Hello, Jax West from Stephen Avery Project, Justice with Jax, and MAM Gossip. Ooh, which way is this? No, it's not this way. It's this way. No, it's worse. Okay. Sorry about that. So Jax West from Stephen Avery Project, MAM Gossip, Justice with Jax. I am live today to go over this week's episode of Convicting a Murderer. Sorry that there's no real heads up given to you all on it. Sadly, my work schedule has gotten even more hectic. Yay me, I got another promotion at work. So it means that I am working full-time days, Monday through Friday, as well as also doing a whole bunch of stuff at night. So my schedule's not as easy to do these kinds of things anymore, but I get to it when I can because this is still a priority to me. So we have been covering this stupid documentary that you can only get on a website, a conservative website called Daily Wire, that you have to pay a subscription to. It is $15 a month. I've been told some of the episodes are available on YouTube, but I don't think all of them are. So, I don't think you can get all of the episodes that are out for free. So that's why I'm taking the hit for you. I'm paying the $15 a month. I watch these stupid episodes. I take notes while I watch. And then I go live to go over what they covered in the episode. And then my thoughts on everything and giving you more of the real story, full story. I don't know how you want to word it. So you don't have to give these people any money. This is episode 8. All the prior episodes you'll be able to find in our videos here. I also wrote a review of the first episode, and that is available here too. I do plan on writing something for each episode because I know not everybody is available to watch a live video or even when it's recorded, because I can ramble on forever. So it is a big time commitment to watch me when I go off for an hour and a half. Hey, Sheila and Annette. So I will be writing something up for each one for people to do just a quick read of it, even though even in the stuff that I write, I can ramble a bit as well. But it has to work around my work schedule on getting these things written up. So let's get into this episode 8, that premiered on October 12th, that they have titled Bones. And the episode opens with the chick who was the canine handler for one of the dogs that they had sniffing around the Avery salvage yard. And so she says that the dog needed, and she had a bloodhound, that the dog needed a scent article. So she had them bring several pairs of Teresa's shoes. There was no mention of the 7 pairs of her underwear that was brought there. So I don't know, is that a different dog smelled her underwear? Or why was her underwear brought there? Why was her chapstick brought there? Why was her toothbrush dropped there? And there's Christopher promoting my book. Thank you, Christopher. Wrongfully Abused on she said that the dog was telling her that Teresa was there. This is when they're like looking, think they're looking for the body. Um, then the next segment is them asking Stephen when is the last time he burned anything, and he couldn't remember. And throughout this episode, and it's going to be in my notes as well, so I'll be parroting it a couple times throughout this video, that Candace Owens, the idiot, and the other people from this that are part of this documentary, they keep pushing that it is suspicious that Stephen at first could not remember if he had a fire on that Monday. And I talk about this a million times. Thank you, Sheila. Annette says just from her YouTube, she's regurgitating what. Yes, no investigating. So they keep pushing that this proves that Stephen's a liar and that he's a killer because he did not right away say he had the fire. But we've talked about this a million times. I know I'll be talking about it a million more times. And where Stephen lived, they did not have garbage service. So you have burn barrels, you have a burn pit. You are regularly burning your garbage because your garbage has to go to a dump, which is a pain. So you're going to burn stuff. And so you may not necessarily remember what night of the week you had a fire. So, and then they're also, I'm getting ahead of myself because I know it's in my notes somewhere too, that they try to make it a big deal that other people from the family wasn't sure what night there was a fire, because again, you're just not sure when you have a fire when you're constantly burning things. And the fact that Stephen burned tires is not, they try to make it out like Stephen's this mastermind and he's only burning tires to try and burn a body, but he would have regularly been burning tires. So it's just all kind of stupid. So next they say, human remains were found around the burn pit, where I have in brackets in my note, no pictures. They are going to address this at some point because they know that's something that us supporters bring up on the regular, that there are no pictures of the bones. Yeah. Oh my God. Jason Matthew, you are Millbilly, right? I think. I'm so bad at remembering people's other names. But I have that in my notes on that. But that's standard practice of when you find evidence, you put that yellow tag thing there, you take a picture of it. You're supposed to wait for the coroner. Hey, Millbilly, I'm glad you're joining us. The coroner, whoever, experts. So that stuff sits there until. So for those that don't know, Millbilly's got a YouTube channel, and he's like way on top of the Stephen Avery case, probably more so than I am. So if you want to go to Millbilly's YouTube, he covers this show as well. But anyway, so that you have to cover that these bones you need a picture of, and they didn't take any pictures, but they've got such a awesome excuse, but I'll wait until we get to that point in my notes. The next thing is we hear Stephen and Barb talking about that it would take days to burn a body. And now they're trying to figure out what night that this was that he had a fire. And so Barb says she went to the hospital with Scott on Monday. So it was a Monday. But then Stephen said, I didn't have that fire, a fire that night. And Barb said he did. She said she had come home at 8 and saw him standing there with the fire. And then Stephen said then Brendan was with him that night. And then the show keeps pushing that that's showing that Stephen is being inconsistent and a lie. And so that one little segment of the phone call, again, I have to keep pointing out that this show that wants to say that Making a Murderer didn't show you everything, they didn't play you that entire phone call. You don't have the entire context of that phone call. They're only giving you a piece of it. Why? Because you can't show everything. But this is just a normal phone call of now, because Stephen's in jail. It's a jail call. All the jail calls are available. I have covered all the jail calls on my Justice with Jack's YouTube channel. If you want to go listen to when we've talked about this exact phone call, that I was playing those calls. We were listening to them, and I would comment as the call would go along. Not snippets of the calls in their entirety. So they're just trying to figure out because Stephen's in jail now, that they took him into custody for this thing. So they're trying to figure out what night that Stephen had done this. That Stephen had not done this. I shouldn't. Now Candace is going to cut that and put it in the thing that I'm saying Stephen did this. That Stephen had a fire. There's nothing suspicious about Stephen or Barb or Brendan not remembering offhand what night he had a fire. So nobody even remembered there had been a fire. And the fire is discussed only after the bones were, and as I have in my notes, the bones were found. Then we see Candy Avery. Candy Avery is one of the people who have done new interviews with the documentary. And she is claiming that she saw the flames and how big the flames were, and that she was surprised the house didn't melt. All right, let me move the next section to the top so I can remember where I am, because I'm about to go to a whole nother topic here that I'm going to forget where I was at. Many of you who will be watching this, you do not know my history with this case. And, well, you could read my book and find out. But once upon a time, I was friends with Barb Toddock and Scott Toddock. And I used to be an admin for Barb's closed group. And so one of the things we had done then, so this would have been 2016, is I went to Barb's house and we did a Facebook Live at Barb's house where I interviewed, so it was Barb, Scott, and Pete Dassey were the three that I was talking to. It's the Debbie Show. My husband was working the camera, and so then I was watching the Facebook Live thing to see people's questions, as well as people had the opportunity to submit me questions in advance. And so we did this really long interview with Barb, Scott, and Pete that is not available. Barb only allowed that live video to be up for 24 hours or 48 hours, I can't remember, and come back down. So it's gone. Nobody can see it. But I talked with Scott, and then after the interview was over, Brian Dassey showed up there with one of his kids. And so I also talked to Brian about this. And I believe all this stuff is all in my book, and I've talked about it before. But I asked Scott about the fire, and I talked to Brian about the fire. And I asked Scott, how big was the fire? Scott's answer to me at that time, and now remember, Scott and I were friends at this time, and I also was defending Scott back then. But Scott had said he doesn't know if there was even a fire or not. He because one of the things I had said to him is, you say this fire was so big, and, I have been behind the garage and see how actually close that burn pit is to the garage. And then there's also the propane tank that's right there. So if you were to have a fire right there that is taller than the garage, propane tank, and that garage is built out of particle board. And so the garage would have gone up. And Scott's testimony, which Candace Owens is not bringing up, that Scott's testimony was inconsistent on the size of the fire. But when I talked to Scott about it, he had said he doesn't even know if there was a fire. He didn't pay any attention. It's because the police kept questioning him, or I shouldn't say police, because we have to make sure we make a distinction between the police and the sheriff's office, because the police department didn't do all the shady shit. The sheriff's department is. So deputies, whatever. They're the ones that kept pushing him to say something. So that's how the fire becomes big. And then when I talked to Brian Dassey, all right, so many of the Avery family have the low IQ, all right, not the brightest people, but some of them are not like that, okay? So Brian Dassey is somebody I would say is, I guess the correct word would be is average. You wouldn't think he could be super smart. I don't know, but you don't get that he's like a Brendan or a Steven with the low IQ. And so when I talked to Brian Dassey about it, he said that what you see the cops do to Brendan, that they did to every single member of the family, that they tried to manipulate every single one of them. And they tried to manipulate Brian, and he wasn't having it and shut it down. So that's why you don't ever hear of Brian anything on this, because he just wasn't doing it. So you can't take what Bobby says on the stand, Scott says, all that as this is what happened, because even though I do think that Bobby is the killer and that Scott had something to do with it, I don't think Scott was part of the killing. I think Scott is a part of the cover-up. They were all manipulated by Manitowoc and Calumet County. And they're going with this narrative that it is Stephen and Mike Osmondson. I agree with you, Millbilly, that Bobby's friend Mike Osmondson has something to do with this. Absolutely. He was a part of something. He knows something. Absolutely. Mike Osmondson is involved. So everybody was manipulated. All right. So there we go. So anybody talking about the fire, Candy now talking about the fire. Candy hates Stephen with good reason. I don't fault Candy for not liking Stephen at all. Because Stephen had sex with her daughter. Whether or not you want to think that it was consensual or not, or if you're going to have a problem with, how old was Stephen when he had sex with Marie? Marie was 17, and was he 36? That's the mom. And you don't want any adult male having sex with your 17-year-old daughter. Wisconsin 17 is consent. So it is, you can't prosecute Stephen for having consensual, because it was consensual sex with Marie. I know this mockumentary is trying to say now that it was not. It was consensual, and as Millbilly has already said here, Marie was obsessed with Stephen. Stephen has plenty of letters. Marie is still in contact with Stephen to this day. Marie has a thing for for Stephen. It was consensual, but I don't blame Candy for having a problem with Stephen for it. I'm a parent. I get it. So I don't fault her for that. But what I would fault her for is making shit up. And so I don't think Candy saw a fire. I think she's just saying that now. So then we see the Gilter producer of the mockumentary who thinks that she's a Stephen Avery case expert. She is a binder of all the jail calls typed up. Big deal. Like I said, you can just go to my Justice with Jack's YouTube channel and go listen to the calls for yourself. Because also I'm not going to believe what she has typed up. So listen to it for yourself then. So then they say that Stephen was in bed watching, as they're saying, sex programs when Jody had called him. And so then as we're listening to the call between Stephen and Jody, one Gilter, who's on this episode, said that Stephen was outside talking to her and that Stephen had said he was cleaning up the yard a little bit. Well, but here's another thing that, now this is something I discussed with Stephen Avery directly. Back at this time, during these jail calls, with Jody, when Jody was in jail because she's a sloppy drunk and has gone to, Millbilly probably knows how many times Jody's gone to jail for being a drunk. She was only allowed to call landlines. She could not call cell phones. So this would have been Stephen's cordless phone that she was talking to him on. And so I asked Stephen how far he could get reception with his cordless phone. And he told me he couldn't even get to his driveway with it. So I was asking him back when I asked him about it, it was because when he's doing these phone calls with Jody throughout the night, they're claiming he's there stoking the flames of Teresa Halbach. Well, he can't get the phone back there. So, and him being on the phone with Jody saying he was cleaning up the yard a little bit doesn't mean he's walking around the whole entire yard at that time. So the phone just didn't have the reception to go do the things they're now claiming he did on the phone. Candace Owens bitched that Stephen didn't say Brendan was with him. And she didn't understand why, because then Brendan would be his alibi. But again, they don't remember for sure what happened on what night. And a piece that they're leaving out here is there was another night that Stephen had invited Brendan to come to a bonfire. And he said something about Barb's kids. Now, Barb's many things, and we talk about Barb all the time. Where is it? Where is it? Yes, I know. Let's slap Barb. I have it upside down. Let's slap Barb. She loves her boys. I do not deny that she loves her kids. But Stephen was pissed off at Bobby Dassey in particular because Bobby is dealing pot out of the salvage yard. And then Bobby would also take parts off of the cars in the pit behind, the Avery brothers' backs or whatever, and was selling them. He was, doing whatever he's doing to make money. And so Stephen was bitching to Barb about her son being losers and they're never going to amount to anything and they don't listen and blah, blah, blah. And so since he was bitching about her sons, she then didn't allow Brendan to go to the bonfire. So that happened in the same week. So they're not sure when Bonfire was, what night was Brendan there, whatever. Again, these are people who live at a salvage yard. They're not knowing for sure what the date is on everything when you're questioning them how many days later. I don't know what I did yesterday, but whatever. Um the next thing we see is when they're having Brendan draw the fire pit, and again, they're not showing that in its entirety, so they're not showing you how Brendan is instructed, put this here, put this there. Um so now, because of Brendan drawing the fire pit, that brings us to the doghouse. And everybody on this crapumentary whines about, as I don't remember which one called it, a junkyard dog. Fassbender. I think it was Fassbender, Factbender. Um, so, and then a cop saying that he couldn't get near there because of Steven's dog Bear. Oh, hi, Bryce. Um, and Colborne says it was a mean dog. And Factbender says now they should have removed the dog. Durr. You know, and it would be so simple to move the dog because you just have an Avery family member take him away. Or you have your animal services come and take Bear away. Again, that would be protocol on what you would do for this scene. But instead, they're leaving the dog there that is allegedly around all this evidence and not doing anything with it because they're afraid of a dog that's chained up there. No. Nice try, people. Nice try. Um The show also pointed out that these canine dogs that they brought there did not alert at all to this burn pit. But the handler was claiming it's just because her dog's a lover and was afraid of Bear. But that's why you have Bear removed, and then you would have the canines do the search. Right? So then it's they say the dog hit on the garage door, but her dog wouldn't go behind the garage by Bear. She says the dog indicated on the trailer door. Now, here it's in the notes, but they don't really go into this. The dog went to Cuss Road, and the dog actually went into the ponds in the quarry. And now here's Millbilly's favorite part. Then they're talking about the berm by Steven's trailer. So what they're trying to say now is that the reason the dog was alerting on the berm and I probably the ponds and maybe even Cuss Road, is they're saying Teresa burning behind the garage. Then the winds took Teresa and deposited her everywhere else from there. That's how everything else got everywhere that the dogs would alert to. It's really incredibly ridiculous. I should look through my pictures from when I went behind the garage because I know I took a picture from the garage showing the berm, but I didn't take the picture at that time to show the berm. I was doing it because back then at that time there was a lot of guilters who were disputing that there was a fence but in between Steven's trailer and the pit. And then they were also disputing the fact that I think Kathleen had been to the garage like a week or so before I was, and that they took a picture of her there and posted it. And so guilters were trying to claim that like Kathleen wasn't really there or something. I can't remember. I get so confused with all these conspiracy theories over the years. So I wanted to make sure I took a picture of this fence to show that the fence was there. And so then my husband also took a picture of me. And at this time, I was friends with the Avery family. Don't judge me. So the picture is me, Barb Taddock, and what's her frickin' name? Why am I blanking on her stupid name that always spies on me? What is her name? Starts with a C. That is the family spokesperson who thinks she's everything. I'm totally blanking on her name right now. Steven's niece, Chuck's daughter. Carla! Thank you, Sand. So it's a picture of me, Carla, and Barb by the fence. And so the fence is a good distance away from the burn pit. And then so would be the berm. So, whatever. So now the wind took Teresa's ashes in a fire that didn't burn long enough or hot enough to burn a body to put it to. I think that's coming up too, because I think I put it in my notes on how big they're saying these bones are, but is able to literally get the bulk of these bones to ash. And now it just blew around everywhere. Whatever. Um, so so they're saying the dogs alerted at the berm, and also that the dog went to where the rav was planted, which, well, they didn't say planted. That's my notes. And so they make that look like a aha gotcha moment, that the dog went to Teresa's car. But if the dog is following Teresa's scent, you would think her scent would be on her car, and also any place her car was driven. Um, the dog handler says she thinks the defense was afraid of what the dog found, so that's why she wasn't called to testify. Basically, just trying to give herself pats on the back that she's so awesome. Um, so the burn pit bones were found on November 8th, and they sifted those bones without ever taking pictures, and then they covered it with a tarp. And now we see Kratz arguing with a Twitter person, a Twitter fan of Stevens. And Kratz says, "What would a coroner have done? Look at a bunch of bone? There is no reason for her to legally walk on the scene. A coroner is not a medical professional or a law enforcement professional." And then Fassbender said, "Coroner is supposed to be contacted by law, and their purpose is to declare a person dead." All right, so let me scroll so I can remember where I am, so I can go off on this a little bit. So again, I've told you all that I work in politics. I work for a state representative. I also work for a political party, helping people get elected. And a friend of mine is running to be my county coroner. And I already know a lot of coroner stuff due to Stevens' case and due to the Melissa Kaluzinski case, because coroners are very important in both of these wrongful conviction cases. And so what Kratz is saying is true, and that many people don't understand this, that a coroner is an elected position, and they do not need to have a medical degree to be a coroner, because the coroner is a legal role. He or she, a coroner, is not examining a body. The coroner is handling the legal aspect of what has happened to the victim. So my friend who is running for coroner is a lawyer. not medical in any way, shape, or form. Um, and we learned this in Stephen's case, the coroner is the only person above the sheriff. A coroner can have a sheriff elected. And it's something funny. I was at an event last night that, so, the woman who was, me going down a whole nother path here, the woman who was my divorce attorney, from my first husband, she was last year, she was appointed to judge. And the way judges are is, judges are an elected position, or if you are appointed, then in the next election cycle, you have to run for that seat and other people can run against you. So you could possibly lose your seat. But then after that, once you are elected by the people, then that's when it's, every so often, it'll then be on your ballot that you're going to vote to retain a judge. So anyway, so my divorce attorney, who is now a judge, she's a she's a juvenile court judge at my county. So she's running for election. So she had a fundraiser last night. And so my friend who is running for coroner was there. And when you go to these fundraisers for candidates, they always acknowledge the other candidates in the room or the other elected in the room. And so what she said about my friend running for coroner, that he's running on the platform of arresting our sheriff. And everybody gets a laugh out of that. Our sheriff's a bad dude. So my friend has to explain this to people all the time, because there's people who like aren't going to vote for him because they're like, you're running for coroner and you're not a doctor. And so he has to explain how the coroner is not the person who is examining the body. They're handling the legal part, so you have the medical examiner or that goes over the body and says, so this is the person doing the legal things for the victim, right? So we all know from Making a Murderer Part 2, Season 2, whatever you call it, when we were seeing the coroner from Manitowoc, that they were not allowing her to take custody of the scene when it is her scene. She outranks the sheriff. And they didn't want her on the scene because there's a prior case where Manitowoc deputies and such were doing shady shit, and they wanted the coroner to play ball on that, and she didn't. So and it was one of the heart-wrenching moments in Part 2 of Making a Murderer when you hear, I can never pronounce her name, Deb Kakanich. She works for the victim. She is the last voice for the victim. So she's not supposed to prove the deputy's narrative, try and say Stephen is innocent, whatever. She is to follow the facts and get justice for the victim. That's the coroner's role. But they then wouldn't let her take custody of the scene, and she knows what happens in Manitowoc, what has happened to other people, and she didn't push. And she let them push her out. So therefore, you have no coroner taking custody of the scene. And then you have Ken Kratz saying vile things like a coroner's job is to kick the body and say, they're dead. Such a lovely guy. So they also did not call a forensic anthropologist to the scene or a pathologist. Eisenberg, who was the forensic anthropologist there, was out of state at the time. So they now have a retired anthropologist look at the bones when they've been brought to Madison. And then he said that they were female and approximate age. This is where you get where I'm like, I swear to you all that I am not a conspiracy theorist with the tinfoil hat. But there's nothing that says that those are Teresa Halbach's bones. They just say that it's female in approximate age, and that's that. I do not think Teresa Halbach is alive. I do not think she's in Canada. I do not think any of that. Those very well could be Teresa Halbach's bones there, but there is no proof saying that it is. That's all I'm saying. There is doubt. On November 10th, Eisenberg goes to work. Fassbender says that bones represented every part of the body, and that typically you are to grit it, photograph, sift, and then collect. And Fassbender says mistakes were made, and that you're always to take pictures before you process it. So I'll give you credit there, Fassbender, for at least admitting that screw up. Now we have where they're saying that Stephen talking about tires on in interviews, both Stephen and Brendan have mentioned about burning tires, and the press chick that I'm only referring to as Glasses thinks it's suspicious that Stephen was burning tires that day. Why? What is suspicious about Stephen living in a junkyard, tires galore, burning tires instead of taking them to a dump? What is suspicious about that? I don't know. Then they're saying that Blaine said he saw Stephen by the fire at 11:30 p.m. So, again, remember, I've already told you that everybody in the family was manipulated about this fire, trying to get them all to say that they saw it and that it was big. And even if there was a fire that night, and even if Stephen was out there at 11:30 p.m., it doesn't mean anything. Stephen, they're making it suspicious that Stephen said if they found bones there, it could be sheep bones. And so Stephen explained that Alan Avery, once upon a time, had sheep in the yard. I'm going to guess he had sheep there like to cut their grass in that big area. I don't know. This is the first I'm hearing of sheep. Or if I've heard it at any time, I've forgotten it. And so Stephen said, and eventually, sheep would whatever, and they would die. And so maybe it could be sheep bones that they found. I don't see anything suspicious about that at all. And also, when you've got the burn barrels, and so you burn stuff in the burn barrels and it goes to ash, and then you got to empty that ash, and so you could have chicken for dinner, and then those bones, so there could be all kinds of animal bones from their kitchen scraps that would first go in a burn barrel and then get dumped in the burn pit because you're emptying the ash out of the burn barrel. So now they're saying the bones were moved from the pit to the barrels. They say the bones in the pit were less than an inch big. And the burn barrel only had 4 pieces of a larger bone, so larger than 1 inch. But even that is a smaller bone. And so they're claiming that Stephen was trying to, this is what they're claiming. Stephen's trying to burn everything to ash, and then when there's bits in there, he's now got to hide that, so then would shovel up those pieces of bone and then put it in the burn barrel, and that he just didn't get all of them, and so that's why there was some of them there. They had teased this at the end of the last episode, that this is like some big bombshell. Making a Murderer's never talked about Teresa Halbach's clothes. But it did talk about Teresa Halbach's clothes. So so first we'll get to they show Brendan saying that her claiming that her Teresa's clothes were in the garage and Stephen told him to throw it on the fire. And then we hear about the brass rivets from her jeans. They say 5 rivets were found. But then they also say there were tooth fragments found. We'll get to that in a second because I'm just following this in the order of the show and the order of my notes. So then we see Teresa Halbach's sister Katie testifying that she knew that Teresa had Daisy Fuentes jeans. And for those that don't know, Daisy Fuentes jeans, Daisy Fuentes line of stuff was sold at Kohl's. So it was very common. So Katie remembers teasing her sister, saying that Daisy Fuentes was old and so that Katie has an old person's jeans. So because of that, of there being 5 rivets found in Stephen's thing and knowing that Teresa had these jeans, it means Stephen did it. But again, that's circumstantial. Oh, feel free to keep ranting, Millbilly. Go for it. I love a good rant. Hello, Betty. And here in my notes, I have Candace thinks it's suspicious making a murderer doesn't talk about burning clothes. And then I have in brackets, which is always my personal opinion in a bracket. I just have written, duh. So dumb. They did talk about burning clothes. They did talk about the rivets. They also talked about clothes that were found elsewhere. Millbilly, where were the other clothes found? What was that? Was that the Maribel caves? That some other clothes were found? Again, Millbilly's going to be your expert because I forget all this stuff and kind of remember it. But I think Millbilly's got the lock on everything. So then they say there were pieces of tooth, and it was tooth number 31. And again, they say it is consistent with Teresa Halbach's x-ray. They don't say it is. And then they say they couldn't say it was 100% her tooth because so much of it is missing. I envy you, Millbilly, because my memory is so shot. So that's where my invisible tinfoil hat goes on again. So they're saying her tooth was there, but it's just consistent with her tooth, and they can't say for sure it is her tooth because so much of it is missing. So is it, what is her name? Carmen? What is her name, Millbilly? Or anybody else who gets it first? Carmen Bootwell? Is that her name? Carmen Bootwell? That there are people who are suspicious of Carmen Bootwell, the way she allegedly killed herself, and that was who was it that then offered to take care of her burial? Was it Manitowoc Sheriff's Department that then took care of her burial, and that she's a distant relation? What, or was it just rumored that she was a relation to Teresa Halbach's mother? And then really wasn't. Well, Sheila or Millbilly, update the people. It's a rumor. Okay, update the people for sure on that. That would the bones and teeth be Carmen Bootwell's? Don't know. All right. So then the next segment is they're like making a murderer left out that there were tools around the pit. And in my brackets, in my notes, I have written so fucking stupid. And so they say a shovel, a rake, and a screwdriver were around the burn pit. And Brendan said, or was told to say, that Stephen used these on a fire. You regularly have a fire in that burn pit. Steven's just going to leave the stuff around there. It's not suspicious that you're going to have a shovel, a rake, and a screwdriver around a burn pit when you're regularly burning stuff. It's just that's just dumb. To then make it out like because that's there, it means you were burning a body. So does that mean okay, Sheila? Sheila's burning a body. Oh, Sheila. Oh, Sheila. Because you've got a shovel and a rake around a burn pit that you're gonna again just like with the burn barrel, when your burn pit gets to have too much ash on it, you're going to take those ashes out of there. You're going to rake stuff. I mean, it's common to do. So that doesn't mean you were burning a body. And was that stuff tested for DNA? Who's touched all those instruments? Who says that any of the Tadic family or Dassey family weren't over there ever using that burn pit? Um, so we see Brendan in an interrogation saying they took the bones to the back of the yard in the pit. Brendan said they had them in a bucket. They say it was a 5-gallon bucket. And then I have in my brackets, laugh my ass off. Can you imagine that? That you live at a junkyard with a truck and all this stuff, and you're going to take stuff out a little at a time with a 5-gallon bucket. So then they mention the human bones found in the quarry. My note says Gilters say Brendan said Stephen did it. I don't remember what that means. Sorry. And then I have in brackets, but Kratz said he never left. So that's, you have to be consistent. And you're saying making a murder is not consistent. You're saying Stephen's not consistent. And then you're not consistent. If Stephen is prosecuted by he's never left the salvage yard and was just there on the phone with Jody being romantic and shoveling and raking at Teresa's bones, how is he then? Oh, and then he's having this big huge fire that people are seeing him at 11:30. How is he going out to the quarry and the gravel pit with 5-gallon buckets and dumping? Because he's never left. We hear Brendan on the phone, or Barb on the phone with Steven saying, my son is going to prison. He's going to get life and he's only 16. And then Steven said, why would he admit to something? I told you to keep your fucking mouth shut. And Barb said, I didn't say anything. And Steven said, you get a lawyer. And Barb says she doesn't have money for a lawyer. And Steven says, you get a public defender. Which, once again, the scrapumentary is trying to make this conversation seem suspicious. And it's not suspicious at all. Because Steven's saying you keep your mouth shut. Now, I wish Steven practiced what he preached. Because Steven also just talks to the cops and doesn't lawyer up. And he clearly knows better. But lots of people do what I say, not as I do. And he's also pissed because Brendan's implicating him in something that he knows he didn't do. So, of course he's going to talk about it in this way. Told you to keep your fucking mouth shut. That's not saying I told you to keep your mouth shut because we did this together and I want you to cover for me. It's keep your mouth shut. Get a lawyer. You get a public defender. There's nothing suspicious in implicating Steven for this by that phone conversation. But that brings us into, they actually brought back Meow Meow Kaczynski. And so we see that he goes on the news and says that Brendan is guilty before he's even talked to Brendan. We hear Stephen on the phone saying, Brendan admitted to it. I can't do nothing with that. And that's 100% going. This is why Brendan really doesn't have any avenues left in his case because of his confession. And Stephen still has things that can be done. I'm not saying there's nothing that can be done for Brendan, but he's got a harder road, and it's because of that confession. The other two cases that I'm a part of, the Marnie Yang and Melissa Kaluzinski, are also false confessions, and both tougher roads because of their false confessions. There's just so many people who do not believe people are going to say they killed somebody when they didn't. I would never do that. You just don't know. In Melissa Kaluzinski's case, you can see almost all of her wrongful interrogation. They have cut some of it, but you can see almost all of it. So you can watch it for yourself on what they did to her. And she also has the lower IQ, and she did a better job than Brendan. I would say her IQ isn't as low as Brendan's. I don't know if Melissa's ever been tested. But Melissa, and I can't remember how many times it is, but it's counted how many times Melissa told them, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. And then after however many hours it was, because I also don't remember how many hours, they told her, say it was an accident. And Melissa, like Brendan, Melissa had a new puppy and she wanted to get home to her dog Oreo. And so it's okay, it was an accident. And she's been incarcerated ever since. So I dropped the kid. And same thing happened with Brendan, thinks he's going back to school. Now, in the Marnie Yang case, Marnie Yang does not have a low IQ. She's actually really smart, but she's also been diagnosed that she's autistic. But she is super smart, and they were going after her son, and so there is recorded phone conversations because the police had been following her and listening to her for quite some time before they took her into custody, where she said on 2 different phone calls she's going to, as she worded it, make shit up, because she figured, I didn't do this. There's no evidence I did it. They're going after my son. I know my son didn't do it, so I'm going to make shit up so they leave my son alone. And the truth will set me free. And she's been in prison for 14 or 15 years now. So don't ever confess. Don't talk. That's all you can do to protect yourself. You don't talk. I know they scare you. All the shows scare you, that if you ask for a lawyer, it just makes you look guilty. But you don't want to be Brendan. You don't want to be Melissa. You don't want to be Marnie. Don't say anything. Actually, I should say you don't want to be Stephen either, because this whole crapumentary keeps talking about how Stephen's inconsistent, and that's because he was talking. Don't talk. Don't talk. Don't take that risk. So that's where that episode ends. And so their next episode, which comes out on October 19th. These comes out on Thursdays. So it comes out on October 19th, which is Brendan's birthday, is titled Manipulating Brendan. And so when they show the clips of what's going to happen next week, it says they're going to go over the docuseries interpretation of the facts. And so then we hear the phone call of Alan Avery telling Brendan not to talk or to take any pleas. And then they're also going to show how Stephen wrote a letter to Kratz saying that he thinks that Candy killed Teresa Halbach. And then Candace Owens is trying to make Brendan look bad, saying Brendan is the only one who could have saved Teresa Halbach, and he chose not to. So before we even get to that episode next week, let's talk about that phone call that Alan had with Brendan, telling him don't talk and not to take pleas. What Alan was saying to him is, you don't take a plea if you're innocent. You take a plea if you're guilty. That's what Alan is saying to him. But this crapumentary is going to try and make it out like Alan is trying to get Brendan to cover for Stephen. And that is not what he is saying. He is saying you don't take a plea if you're innocent, which is something we hear Barb say to Brendan on Making a Murderer too. So it's just a thing that they all believed. If you're innocent, just like when I'm telling you about what Marnie Yang did that put her in prison. You think you're innocent and there's no facts to prove that. So why are you going to take a plea deal? So, and they will point out that people will say if Brendan had taken the plea deal he was offered, he'd be out by now or getting out soon. And by him not taking the plea deal he was offered, now he still sits there. But Alan wasn't telling him that to protect Stephen. Alan's saying it because that's what that family believed. You do not take a plea deal if you're not guilty. So that's all that is. And then Stephen writing the letter to Kratz. Kratz is the one that wrote a letter to Stephen. Okay? And I've talked to Stephen about this before. And so Kratz wrote a letter to Stephen wanting Stephen to tell him his story. This is after Stephen's been found guilty and been in prison for some years. That, Kratz wants to make money off this case, right? And so Stephen played with Kratz. Well, Stephen's got the low IQ and everything. He's not a complete imbecile. And so Stephen said things back to Kratz. So they were both trying to manipulate each other. So, and unless this thing that wants to keep blaming Making a Murderer for not showing you everything is now going to talk to Stephen and get Stephen's side of the letters between him and Kratz, you're not giving the full story, Candace Owens. And I am not making excuses for Stephen. I truly, truly, truly have no dying loyalty to Stephen. If there was something they could show me to say that Stephen is guilty, I would tell you. Because it makes no difference in my life if Stephen is guilty or innocent. Nothing at all. Changes nothing for me. I go by science and facts, common sense. Stephen is innocent. It would be so easy for me to be like so many others and just go guilter. Stephen doesn't like me. He's cut off contact with me. The last time I heard from Stephen is when he called me after his mom died. And he called me that one time, and then I haven't heard from him again since then. And I used to visit Stephen. It'd be so easy for me to go guilter. But I have to go by science and facts and evidence and witnesses and proof. And Stephen is innocent. Not a saint. I'm not a saint. You're not a saint. We've all got skeletons. But Stephen and Brendan are innocent. I also do not believe that Brendan had any part of anything that Bobby Dassey did. Brendan is sweet. and is a true innocent. And as I said in the last live I did on this, he's truly the lamb brought to the slaughter. He's a good kid. And what they're claiming that Kayla said about Brendan being upset and losing weight, because he did this. If Brendan had truly done this crime or witnessed it in any way, whether it was Steven or Bobby or anybody, he would still be that way. He would still be so depressed. He can't kill a fly. He's not okay with killing a person, an animal, nothing. So if he had any part in this whatsoever, everybody would see it on his face to this day. It wouldn't be something just happening right then. It would be eating away at him all this time. But Brendan also has people that he talks to and that he confides in. And many of these people have manipulated Brendan and then have later tried to sell their story and say things about Brendan. So Brendan would have told these people these things and they would have sold it. It has never, nobody's ever come out saying Brendan told them XYZ about it. That's not to say nobody couldn't, because they could just completely make it up. But it's never come out because Brendan wasn't there. No matter who did whatever it is that was done to Teresa Halbach. I stand by, we can't ever know for sure what happened to Teresa Halbach. We can just go by what the evidence points to. And we've got Bobby and Scott Taddock crisscross seeing each other, knowing the exact time. We have Bobby's brother Brian saying he had been told that he saw, Bobby told Brian that he saw Teresa Halbach leave. We have Blaine Dassey say when he was riding the school bus home, he saw his brother driving the RAV4. We have Barb Taddock posting in her Facebook group that she talked to Bobby and that Bobby said he never saw Teresa that day at all. Millbilly talking about Mike Osmondson. You have Mike Osmondson testifying about claiming Steven want to help me hide a body, and Steven was already in custody on that date. Steven, other than did he have a fire on that Monday, has always been consistent. Them saying that he didn't say Brendan at first, I've already said that. There were 2 different fire nights. One, Barb wouldn't let Brendan go to the fire because she was mad at Steven. Was Brendan with him there on the Monday? Was it a different night? Wasn't sure. So that's being real. That's not being inconsistent. That's not knowing for sure what night you had the fire. Something they're not covering is, and I'm not going to pull it out again, even though I think I still have it sitting out here, is the signing in and out of the salvage yard. That you had Michael Halbach, Scott Blodorn, and Ryan Hillgass, now on Facebook, Ryan Hill, signing in and out of the salvage yard. And many other of the Halbach family signing in and out of the crime scene. So you're not letting the Avery family on their own property, but you're letting the alleged victim's family come in and out. To me, that is extremely suspicious. And I am still a believer that those 3 boys have something to do with helping Manitowoc plant shit. I do not believe that Bobby Dassey planted the blood. I still believe that is Manitowoc that planted the blood. I think Manitowoc planted the blood, planted the key. I don't think they planted the shell casings, the magic bullet that was there, but they put Teresa's chapstick on it. So common sense would say to me, if they're planting a key and they're doctoring a bullet, that they're also doing the blood. And I am going to I don't know for sure where the blood came from, but we discussed it already when the episode The Vial of Blood, that this is a vial of blood that, just like that, I'm going to keep harping on this, that my husband did in 2016. And when he did it in 2016, there was a hole on the top of this. But now when we are in 2023, there's no more hole. The hole is gone. So for there to be a hole on top of that vial that was in the courtroom, that means somebody put a needle in that recently. I don't know how recently. I didn't pay attention to this on how long it took before this hole completely sealed up and was gone. I've talked to my husband about we should do it again to see. So, and I can't go by Sherry Culhane saying there's no EDTA in the blood, because she's told to put Teresa in his trailer or garage, and she tampered with evidence by putting her own DNA in it. And she sat on the Penny Bernstein DNA, I want to say it was a year before she finally tested it. To keep Stephen in there longer and to keep the cover up. So, and then they hide the RAV4 from Kathleen Zellner, not allowing her to do her own testing on it. And Culhane used up all the sample. And I know all you guilters who are watching me right now. I sound like the crazy conspiracy theorist. I know. But I'm just telling you, it's the boy who cried wolf. I can't believe anything Sherry Culhane says, anything that comes out of her lab as it pertains to Stephen Avery, which then would make it all cases are suspicious. So I think that police planted that blood. Now, I was asked, who do I think planted the RAV4? Until we had the witness that came forward sawing Bobby Dassey and somebody else pushing the RAV4 towards the salvage yard, I had thought it was Manitowoc who planted the RAV4 there. I now believe Bobby Dassey and whoever assisted him, whether it was Scott, was it Mike Osmondson, whoever it was that was helping him push the RAV4 to the salvage yard, Bobby is the one that put it there. But I believe that it was locked. They can't get into it. How does the day planner get in there? So And we don't have Teresa Hallbach's keys. We only have her valet key. So I believe they got the valet key from the three boys, from Scott Blodorn, Michael Hallbach, and Ryan Hilgas, Ryan Hill, um, and the day planner. And that's what I know. They say they had a key made, but I believe they still collected that from her house. And I believe those three boys were told at that time that Stephen is guilty. The evidence all points to it. But due to the wrongful conviction, he's going to get away with your sister, girlfriend, lover murder. So we need to do things to connect this. And I have to say, I guess you don't know until you're in that situation what I would do. You know, if you killed my son, and I have police telling me that you did it and you're going to get away with it, I don't know what I would do. I can't say with a certainty what I would do. So for the initial thing, I don't fault them, okay? But I fault them since December 2015 when Making a Murderer came out. Once you've seen, and you're not just listening to law enforcement, because until Making a Murderer, I've said this before, until Making a Murderer, I'm somebody who, if police told me something, I just believed it. I have no reason to doubt police because I live in my world of white privilege growing up in a Chicago suburb. And police aren't out to get me. So I don't know. So I would tend to, prior to Making a Murderer, I would just believe police. And Making a Murderer is what spun me all the way around going, wow, you really need to look at things. And let me tell you this too. Here I am going off on another thing. This is back to my job. So again, I work for a state representative. The state representatives are going to be going back into session at the end of October. And this session is called veto session. And one of the big bills and stuff that's going to be discussed here in Illinois is, so Illinois has people that are sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. And so there is a bill now that wants to give clemency to people because, hello, Share Bear. Because they feel that people shouldn't ever not be given the opportunity for parole. There should always be that, people can change their lives and then be let back out into society. Okay. And so my boss knows about all my advocacy for wrongful convictions. She knows that, I have to take off of work when I go down to visit Melissa Kaluzinski in prison, before she was a state representative, she's also an attorney, so we talk about this stuff all the time. And so we have inmates, and I'm not even sure how they're calling us. It's really, because whenever Melissa Kaluzinski calls me, I get a recording saying this is a call from an inmate at Logan Correctional Center. Or no, this is a call from, and then it drops out. And then I hear Melissa's voice saying, Melissa, an inmate from Logan Correctional. To accept this call, press 1 now. But these inmates are able to call my office, and it's not telling me it's an inmate call and for me to press a number or whatever. It's this guy calling me from prison. And so he's been calling every day because he says he sent a package to my boss. And so he wants her to write him a letter of recommendation that he should be considered for this clemency for his crime. And there was somebody else that reached out to me, or to the office, that is a female case. And then I made sure, too, that I wrote down that woman's name. And when I visited Melissa on her birthday, October 4th, I asked her if she knew that person. And then I've also done my looking into, Googling these cases and what I could find. And so this guy had sent this big packet. I mean, it was like this thick, to the representative, that my rep didn't even want to look at it, because due to what we have looked at online, for this guy's case, he was 19 years old and he was a heroin dealer, and he was getting his heroin from other dealers that he was then to sell this for them, but he then was pocketing the money. And so these guys wanted their money and was looking for this guy. And so one day they like found him and had him get in the car with them. So it's three guys and this one guy, 19 at the time, remember? And so the guy then shot all three of them. Two of them died. One of them is now paralyzed. So he's a drug dealer, stealing their money, stealing other drug dealers' money, murders two of them, maims another for life, and now he wants clemency and is trying. And so in that packet, there was nothing about his case in the packet. There's all these letters from all these other elected officials, so I was writing down on the envelope too all the officials, so I could let my representative know who are the ones that were writing these letters. And all these letters too, when I was reading them, they were mostly the same. And some of these politicians, because I know a lot of the politicians here, so I know these people, but they're saying, well, I don't know him personally. And some of them would even say, and while I don't know what he did, I know in the years that he's been in prison, and he's been in prison since 1996, that he's taken these classes, he's done this, he's gotten this certificate, that he's also not saying he's innocent, he's saying he did it, but he's trying to claim that at 19, your brain's not fully formed, so you can't be responsible for what you did. And then him being a black guy in Chicago and in the whole gang season or gang thing, that you're so about the gang life that like makes excuses that you shot three people, killed two of them, and crippled another. Whether or not, just like I talk about Stephen, whether or not the people he killed and the one that he maimed are good people, because they're not good people either. They were drug dealers too, but you don't get to just kill them. And as my representative said, and I agree with her, clemency is like you're getting a wash now, and it's all good. So no, and I agree with her, and she wants to hear my thoughts on things. She calls me a bleeding heart. But she wants to hear my thoughts on these cases. And I'm like, no, I do not think this man should get clemency. I'm sorry, you're 19 years old. Shooting people is bad. And you shot three people, killed two, crippled another. I don't think that now, great, I'm glad he's doing well in prison and is, taking classes and getting these certificates, but I don't think your crimes get to just be washed away and now you get to just be out and be free. I agree in rehabilitation. I agree with being able to do your time, and that people then let them out. But I mean, this is severe. If he was in there for just being a drug dealer, that would be different. You killed two people in another. I can't just say, now you get to go home. But then on the other hand, the woman, and nobody tried to say to me that I'm saying this because I'm a woman and I'm defending a woman. But here in Illinois, we have what is called the accountability law. So She was friends with and with the people. They were out at a bar, and then they went to some after party at somebody's house, and then the people that she was with, that she had gone there with, killed people. And so she's in prison for murder for life without possibility of parole, even though she didn't do it. She was just there. It's the accountability law. So for her, I would give her clemency and let her out. You have to go by a case by case basis. So, yeah, sorry. I took you guys in a whole other thing. And I know on Stephen Avery Project, I get it real big every time when I talk about any other kind of cases. And people are like, what does this have to do with Stephen? This is Stephen Avery Project. But I'm sorry, there are other cases. I am interested in other cases, and I'm going to talk about them. Um, I believe in Brendan's case. If that was given to me here, I absolutely would give Brendan clemency. You have no evidence of Brendan other than his coerced confession, which is obviously coerced. So if it was Brendan and there's no making a murder, if there is no making a murderer, and I just go off of the research that I do on this case, since people want to say making a murderer just convinced all of us, there's reasonable doubt, and I do not. Brendan, there's no evidence, there's no proof of Brendan. I still don't understand how you can prosecute Stephen and Brendan for two different scenarios, and there's no Brendan in Stephen's case. I that alone to me is reasonable doubt that you're giving two different scenarios. So, but that's where I stand on things. I'm not automatically just going to say somebody should be free, or I have to look into it. So, like on that one guy's case, I was digging and digging and digging on everything I could find on the case. And, to say to the representative, no, absolutely not. I would not write a letter recommending he get clemency. No. The woman, yes, I would. And I asked Melissa about her too, because Melissa is somebody who, she doesn't get involved in the drama. She keeps to herself. She wants no part of anything that's, going on in the prison. So Melissa pretty much, she gets up. They get them up so early. Melissa has to go for breakfast at like 4 a.m. So she does breakfast, she takes her shower, she goes to work, and during good weather, she will go for a walk, and then she's in her room. So she stays away from everybody else, but she's going to give me her honest opinion on these people, guilty or innocent. And so I asked her about that woman and what she would think on it. And she says, sometimes the woman can be a bitch, but anybody can be. I'm a total bitch. I regularly admit that. But she agrees with that woman should be given clemency. If she thought the woman shouldn't, she would tell me so. So I'm not going to go by, because back on that guy, some of the letters in there are from representative and senators that I respect. But I don't agree with them writing a letter for this guy. Don't. So I'm not just going to go. I mean, because one of them, Congresswoman, I'm really tight with. When she has fundraisers, I'm on her host committee. I know her very well and like her very much. But I don't agree that she wrote this letter for him. And that's not going to just convince me of something, because this is a congresswoman who I really respect. I got to go by what the evidence shows me. And the evidence shows me you were a drug dealer, killing people. You deserve to be where you're at. And you don't get to just have a wash and get clemency. No. Parole? we can talk parole, but clemency, where you're not going to be on parole and you don't know. No. So, there you go. Um, I don't know. Hold on. Let me be a douche and pull up my work schedule for next week. Thursday. Oh, wait. Did he just ask me to? No, he asked me on Wednesday. Thursday. Okay, so um I'll just be working on Thursday until 4:30 and getting home at 5ish. So I'll probably be able to go live on Thursday around 6 p.m. Central Time, as long as I've had the chance to watch it ahead of time, because I have events at night on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. Okay. So I work all day and then have events at night as well. So hopefully on Thursday, I will be able to go over the next episode of Candace Owens' crapumentary that is titled Manipulating Brendan. So now I will call this to a close. Thank you, everybody who joined me today. I will do another plug for Millbilly on YouTube. That Millbilly is live on there a whole lot, and he's going to have a whole lot of stuff that you can go through in his archives of videos he has done. So recommend going to Millbilly's. You can go to Justice with Jack's YouTube page, because I've done miscellaneous videos over there. I have done live videos here on Stephen Avery Project, as well as Justice with Jax. And then also we have a closed Facebook group that is called MAM, which stands for Making a Murderer. I'm always shocked when people say to me they don't know what MAM stands for. MAM. Millbilly, tell them what your channel, tell Chelsea what your channel is. Go ahead and type it in here in chat. Or if you want to put the direct link in there, if it lets you, feel free to do that too. What was I saying now, squirrel? MAM Gossip. So our closed group, MAM Gossip, I've done a lot of live videos on there too. That's when we've like gone to the crime scene. I've gone to Teresa Halbach's house, to her grave. We have timed and driven. Teresa's walking. We've done Cuss Road. I've walked to the deer camp and then had to go to court for it because I got as Earl Avery says, a trespassing ticket for being at the deer camp. I have walked the Pam Stern Path of God. I've got tons of videos to show you that you just have to find them on whether they're an MAM Gossip, the Justice with Jack's YouTube page, or they're here. I don't remember where I've done all these things all these years. I'm going to be taking another trip to Manitowoc, but I haven't decided when. So stay tuned for that. And then when I do that, I can never tell you in advance, because the Avery family always tries to have me arrested if I come anywhere near the salvage yard. So it's always a surprise when I decide to do that. But we will be doing that again. And anytime there is a filing or news on the case, I come live. I just can't come live to you like I used to, that it would be right away, because now I work 9:30 to 4:30 Monday through Friday. So I'm just not as available. So, I always like to say on these two, if you are a witness, and you know anything on Stephen's case, you go to KathleenTZellner.com. You go to the Stephen Avery page on there. She has an email and she has a phone number just for this case. Please go to Kathleen and tell her what you know. She will do whatever she can to protect you. So I'm looking at you, Scott Blodorn, Ryan Hilgas, in Michael Halbach. Go tell Kathleen. Um, and if you want to donate to Stephen, also on Kathleen's page, are ways you can donate directly to his commissary or donate towards Kathleen. And you can have Kathleen put that money on his books, or you can just put it towards his legal defense that she's doing pro bono. All right? If you see anybody ask for money for any reason, no matter how they're connected to Stephen, they talk to Stephen, they visit Stephen, whatever, you do not put money through those people, because too many times those people have turned out to not be on the up and up. So just give it to Kathleen Zellner. On Stephen Avery Project, we have a pinned post on how you can write to Stephen and to Brendan. And yes, it goes to Phoenix. I think in the graphic that I have posted, Phoenix has a typo in it, but it's still Phoenix, Maryland. That is how you can write to Stephen. You can also find how you could write to Stephen. But I always have to tell people, don't think because you write them, you're going to get a letter back. You're not, so just send them a letter of support. Don't do it because you think of them as famous and you just want to hear from them, and then you get mad at them if they don't respond to you. All right. And then I guess I should do one last plug for my book, right? My book, Wrongfully Abused, Making an Advocate for Stephen Avery. This is my thoughts on the case, and this is just a journey I've traveled on this case with Stephen and his family, and people who have come for me for being a supporter and not being one of the family's lapdogs. So it is only available on Amazon by me, Jax West. So I will hopefully see you on Thursday. Have a nice weekend, everybody. As always, investigation continues.